As we get started, we're going to talk pictures, the elements that are involved in cinematic language, those first 3 seconds, and then we're going to explore those cues that I was talking about. So let's start by talking pictures here. I think that what's interesting for me is that we talk about this idea of verbal and non-verbal. So what is that, and what is that percentage if you really start looking at how much communication is happening? And the interesting thing about this is 60% of all communication is non-verbal. It's body language stuff. So 30% is your tone. That means that 90% of what you're saying ain't coming from your mouth. I love that quote. I think it's fun. It really just makes you start to think about everything else that could be going down. And what could that be, for example? Well, if you look at cinematic language, we really talk about the staging of something in camera. We talk about the physical camera angle that may have an influence. And then, of course, there's the technical stuff, lighting, sound, the editing, and so on. Before we even get to the performative part, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. But as usual, I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about a story. And this particular story starts with staging, and it's about staging and a movie called Alien that we all loved, which is 1979. It was Ridley Scott who did it. It was just a fantastic film. But the real one that I want to talk about was the one that came after. James Cameron did in 1986 this fantastic movie that was just on another level because we dealt with a fear, but this was a different kind of warfare with an animal that we really didn't understand. And it was truly terrifying. And I want to tell you my feeling when I first sat down and watched James Cameron's work. Now, as a director, he came from a military background, and he also came from an agency world where he did strategic work, but he is a remarkable strategist. And what is amazing about it is this film has the incredible way of deploying situations so that we know where everything is. Where are the aliens? Where are the people who are being saved? Where are the heroes in the scenario? And then it would jump into an action scene. And remarkably, we would know all the time where everything is just because he deployed scenes so well. So if you ever do get to see Aliens and you haven't yet, then make a date. It's a really fabulous movie. But what I want to say about this is the incredible thing about staging your scenes right really holds the audience, and I think audiences appreciate that something is deployed properly and they understand where it all sits. Now, on a much more subtle level, this comes back into even a presentation where you see me at the moment, you see where the backdrop is, and then when I cut to a close-up, you do understand where I am in that world. But there's far more than that. Let's start by just talking about what camera angles are about and what you really are doing. And I still see people in meetings where the camera is not at their eye line. So the insane thing about this is if the camera is too high, it has a kind of a diminishing effect because it's looking down at you, and because of that, you're almost giving your power away. It's like that little kid looking up at the parents. And in the same way, if you are going to use a camera that's at a low angle, you're going to make it a little bit scary. So here's some ideas of where you see a high angle looking a little bit, it's a diminishing of what it does to the gentleman. At eye level, we feel comfortable. And then at a low angle, we immediately in horror space. So we're immediately getting to a space that's a little bit uncomfortable and it's a little bit scary. And add the right lighting and you're there. Now, while I'm on this topic of camera angle, the other thing that you want to look at is your frame up. A medium close-up like this deals with a section of what we call headroom at the top. And it's sometimes funny to me to see people who are sitting a little bit low in the shot in their frame up. And obviously that's because their laptop seems to sit at a strange angle looking up at them. I'm startled that this still happens, but I thought to quickly just jump through those because they are really, really important. Now, a saying that I heard that I really liked, this was Sid Sheinberg, who discovered Steven Spielberg, has this fantastic wisdom, and he says, if your lighting was bad for the movie, then you better have great sound. And so I think these technical things work together, and I'm going to talk a little bit about sound, although sound is a harder one to demonstrate across this because there's compression and I didn't want to go into too much detail with it, but nevertheless, I think sound is as important, lighting and, even that mix of editing are all very, very, very important aspects of cinematic language that we're going to cover tonight as we talk about it. But first I want to talk about something really critical. I often mention this, which is the first moments of somebody seeing you on camera when you say, hello, here I am, I would like to talk to you. And those moments are so important because not only are people making all of those decisions about what they see, what they like, what they don't like, whether there's credibility and so on, they're also listening to how that opening line is crafted, to what it is that you said at the outset that's going to take them along on the journey and bring them in. And that is very, very critical. But tonight we're focusing on these elements that are really the categories of nonverbal. So they sit in about some 6 or so categories, and facial aspects, of course, important. Paralinguistic, which is your tone. How do you pause? How does the pace roll out and so on? The body, the posture, before you get to gestures, and then also something like personal space, which is how does the presenter seem in their personal space? Are they comfortable? Are they leaning? Are they touching something? Do they seem to be nervous? Do they, twitch or so? And then, of course, gestures. How do they use gestures? How does the rhythm of this go with the sound of what they're talking about? And how does that all flow before we get to appearance? Believe it or not, really, really important. Appearance can be everything. At the heart of it, you want to see how these elements can be used to either repeat or reinforce what you're doing. It could complement. It could even contradict what it is that you're saying. So you could be using gestures that may not completely align with what you're saying. And that could be disturbing to an audience. So all of this stuff gets in the way. And I don't want you to be terrified right now at the outset, but the kind of stuff that I can leave you with in this section to go, if I could pin something, it would be this idea to say, test and practice a lot. Film yourself. You know that a Zoom call can be recorded. Check it out and see if you can spot some patterns, something that you do that may stand out a little bit. And rate yourself on stuff like eye contact. Do you make contact with a camera? Facial expressions, are they too much? Should you tone it down? Should you bring it back? And then, of course, the linguistics as well of it, the tone, the voice and so on, and gestures.